her a call again, and then she just added another phone number to the 13-year-old grandson who's possibly with the daughter. Step out with this.
2412.
Veteran crisis hotline's calling in, so they have a female veteran off her medication. She's at work to safe haven. Attacking 12, take a check that one out.
6 Rumble, 2 point start, take your shots.
Also, still stay up to talk, no?
Offender in custody?
Please come forward. Anyone else involved with the let me know.
3-3, can you let us supervise
officer still stands for time? No.
Offender in custody?
Thanks. Anyone else close by this result, let me know.
Yes, good evening, good evening. It's Sunday night. Hopefully y'all are warm. It's still freezing as hell here. Still freezing as hell. Thank you all who joined me. Thank you for being a member if you are a member. And also if you joined us earlier when we did our OJ25. We had episode 4. Thank you for hanging out earlier. Appreciate you. We're going to be going into Scott Peterson tonight. I'd like to know what you guys think. What do you think about the LA Innocence Project? And what do you think that they're even picking it up? Because usually, they have so many people submitting to get accepted. So usually when they do, I don't know what's out there, right? What's out there? So we're going to be starting off probably the first episode or 2 of this. We're going to be doing these for sure Sunday nights. Not that we won't do it on another night, but every Sunday night we'll be doing this. And we're first couple ones we'll probably be kind of going through the background, kind of, like getting caught up. Today with this episode, we're going to get caught up in all the stuff that's going out there right now about this LA Innocence Project. and then we'll kind of get into some of the background. And also, I'd like to try and watch the trial too. And then as something happens, I don't know, we'll hear something. There's a couple things specifically that they're stating, so we'll see. Tomorrow night we'll be doing part 2 of It's All About the Greenjamin's Baby. I'll be finishing up the read through of that final chapter, and then after we're done with doing part 2, then I'm gonna splice them together, and then that'll be its own Cliff Notes video. So we'll be having that. Now you will get a notification here tonight when it comes to some Idaho 4 content. I do have a highlight dropping in about 45 minutes or so. It's just for any of those that are wanting to watch some more Idaho 4. It's the interview and my commentary when he was on the Cup of Joe interview that we watched yesterday. So I went ahead and put that out. And then that way, if anybody's not interested in the Scott Peterson and they still want CJ and some Idaho, there's a little video that they could watch, like an hour or something. What'd you guys think about the University of Idaho being created to keep the panhandle? What about that, huh? Proud to be 19. The coffee cup. Mr. Green, proud to be 19. All sorts of stuff in last night's show. It was like boom, boom. I know it was 6 hours, but we went through a lot. Definitely had the first part of the read through of the final chapter too. That's pretty crazy. We're going to be getting into that tomorrow night. I can't wait. I'm going to try and be on tomorrow. It all depends on what's going on next door. If it's quiet enough, then I will be able to do one. Otherwise, it's just been getting louder and louder each time. I don't understand. Usually you think it would go the opposite way, but I don't know. What's up, Jacqueline? Detective Golden, ticket number 2. Thank you. Kelly Miller. Golden ticket number 3. Looking forward to digging into this one and hearing everyone's thoughts. The Innocence Project doesn't just take any case. No, they don't. Curious on this for sure. Please hit the like, y'all. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that. And really, do you guys think guilty? Not sure? Innocent? I don't know. If you're comfortable dropping what you think, drop it in chat what you think. You think he's guilty? You don't know? Or innocent? Mark and Betty, ticket 6. Kib Kitty, ticket number 8. I'm interested to see what this LA Innocence Project is, and because you got so many people, so many people saying I'm innocent. They don't just take anybody. What Kay Miller said is right. What's up, Melissa? What's up, Ty? I've been all over the place lately. I'm interested in why this. The LA Innocence Project picked it up. What's up, Christina? Ticket number 10. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Mistaken, ticket number 12. Caddy, ticket number 11. Amy, what's up? What's up, Christina? What's up, Holly? How are you? Hey, y'all. Go Buffalo. Who's playing right now? I haven't even been paying attention to football today. I was working on highlights, and we did the OJ members only. Been busy today. Amy, ticket number 16. It knocked me right out. Uh-oh. Nevada says ticket 16. Something happened. Or 15. Or 16. Who knows? It always happens. But it turned twice. I wasn't sure. Hey. No. It's frickin' YouTube, man. No, Mr. Green. I am 19. There you go, Kelly. What's up, Paula? How you doing tonight, Kelly? That's funny. Proud to be 19, right? Just as much as he, because you can only use I'm a freshman president. I'm a sophomore president. You can only use it so much. Now it's proud to be 19. After you're a senior, what are you going to say? I was a held back 19. Yeah. It doesn't have the same pizzazz to it. So he got creative and he's like, proud to be 19. I can use that forever. Matthew McConaughey, Dazed and Confused. I'm just proud to be 19. I'm just proud to be 19. It's gross. It's gross, especially. I'm a freshman president. It's like some Bill Clinton shit. You know what I mean? He does kind of have that Bill Clinton type, don't he? Oh, shit. He does have that Bill Clinton type shit. Oh, Nathaniel, what's up? He says it's all for money and publicity. This has nothing to do. Interesting. We're going to look up the LA Innocence Project. We're going to look them up. Yes. Oh, I already know that, Christina. That's why you look at the thumbnail, it says the LA Innocence Project. There's a difference. Proud to be Ticket 19. Uh-oh. We know your name's Nina. Nina, because it says Nina where your picture is. I don't think you need to announce that your name's Nina when you have Nina by your picture. But what's up, Nina? Oh, boy. What do you want the poll to be? What do you want the poll to be, Holly? I need to hear the evidence about the van. Yeah, that burnt van. Isn't that crazy? Scott Peterson, guilty as sin. I find it hard to believe he's innocent. Shocked they took the case for sure. Who knows? Maybe it could be publicity. Buffalo and KC. Who is the game today? Joanne, what's up? Ticket number 26. I have not been paying attention. What's up, Aaliyah? Ticket number 26. We did the first part read through last night. Shout out to Aaliyah. She purchased the university's crisis handbook from Mr. Green for the community and for me to be able to read. I appreciate that. Sorry it took so long. Freaking internet, man. Pretty sure he was 6. Peace. What's up, Root? If people think Scott should get a new trial, well, let's do it. Hold on 1 second. Give me 1 second. Let's do the switcheroo, and then I'll drop the Innocence Project that we're going to check out here before we get started into some of those videos. Thank you all for hanging out. I appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe. If not, and you have not hit the like, please hit the like. It is the free way. Both of them are the free way to help. I'll see you right back here in a second. All right, so this is the Innocence Project, LA. It's kind of cut off from me. Let me fix that. There. Now you can see it. Los Angeles Innocence Project. All right, so let's put that poll up there. Give me 1 second. And then we're going to check out this Innocence Project thing here. I don't know. What's the new evidence, though? What's the new evidence, though? And I wonder if you can change your vote. After we watch this, I wonder if you can change your... I don't know, because we'll see. We'll see what's... I don't know. We're going to get into it. So there's the poll. Does Scott Peterson deserve a new trial? This case in Westfield made me a true crime sleuth. Westerfield? What's Westerfield? What's Westerfield? we're going to go through it. We're going to read it. All right. This is the LA Innocence Project. Our mission, our work. Donate. How do you donate? Donate stock. Oh, and here, let me share the link with you, because we always do that. Let's see here. So there's the link for the website. We're just going to take a look around here real quick. Let's see here. InnocenceLA.org. Exonerating the wrongly convicted, freeing the wrongly incarcerated. LAIP's mission is to exonerate the wrongfully convicted, free the wrongfully incarcerated, uncover and remedy past misuse of forensic and other scientific evidence in the courtroom, improve standards for the use of forensic and other scientific evidence in the courtroom, and reform the criminal legal system to prevent future injustice. Thanks to the generous support of our founding donor, Andy Wilson, LAIP provides pro bono investigatory services and legal representation to indigent individuals in Central and Southern California who assert claims of innocence. So it really is just the Los Angeles. Cal State, LA. What is this, a video?
Yeah, I kind of remember this. I was sending these to different law firms trying to seek help. I am writing this letter to organizations, firms, and legal institutions that are willing to provide legal assistance to persons such as myself who are falsely convicted and incarcerated. I have been incarcerated for 15 years for a murder I did not commit. The most compelling of the evidence that I have, as of yet, been examined is DNA evidence, which will conclusively show that I was not the person involved with the deceased at the time of the crime. I think I made about 40 to 50 of these letters, and I got a prison directory out of the law library, and I was sending these letters to all kind of organizations for legal help, but everybody said they couldn't help me.
Maurice Hastings was wrongfully incarcerated for 38 years for a murder he did not commit, had nothing to do with. When I first met him in prison, I was immediately struck by how serene, how thoughtful, how certain he was that he would one day see justice done in his case.
Would be grateful for his immediate release, and counsel will be working immediately for actual finding of innocence.
I have read and considered the joint motion. I am prepared to accept it and make a finding of factual innocence. Accordingly,
I wanted to give up. You know, you get tired. You want to just lay down, just, well, I'm good. You know, but something in you didn't want to give up. I did not want to give up. I didn't want to give up. And then my family support, my mom, she's praying for me. I'm praying. I got a lot of people praying for me. I'm trusting in God.
I know.
And just something in me said, no, you can't. You got to keep moving. You can't give up. You can't just lay down on your life. Help is going to come in some kind of way. You just don't know. Just got to keep believing. I keep trusting.
So the Los Angeles Innocence Project at Cal State LA is dedicated to looking into any and every case that comes across our desk where someone is claiming that they are innocent, where they need help finding the evidence, new evidence that will show that they had nothing to do with the crimes for which they were convicted.
So part of the School of Criminal Justice and Criminalistics at Cal State LA includes the California Forensic Science Institute, which collaborates with the Los Angeles Innocence Project. The California Forensic Science Institute advances the forensic science through a multidisciplinary approach that focuses on research development, student support, community engagement, and professional training.
The Los Angeles Innocence Project at Cal State LA was able to launch because Andrew Wilson, who is an exoneree himself, who had his murder conviction overturned in 2017, generously donated $1 million so that we could start this new partnership and see where it takes us.
Wow. You know what? That should be like part of these settlements where, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, but think about this, crime solver. There should be something in these settlements where a percentage of what the lawsuit is settled for, a percentage of that not taken away from the person that won the settlement, that's on top of the settlement, but a chunk of it, a percentage, goes to these places like this. Anytime there is somebody exonerated, anytime, it should be across the country. Not only the person, but what percentage of the lawsuit, and they also have to pay that percentage to one of these, whoever it is. It doesn't matter. They can choose, right? Their local area, their local state, something. That way there's always a little bit going, because, man, imagine this. Imagine if this gentleman didn't do, because he probably had a humongous settlement. 50 years. Probably had a humongous settlement. Donated $1 million. Imagine if they would have never got that $1 million from him. How many of them are actually donating any money like this gentleman did? Probably not very many. Man, can you imagine? I mean, I know as much as it might be for publicity and stuff, man. At least they're trying to do the right thing, you know? I don't know. Who knows? We don't know what this new evidence is. They're supposedly saying something. They're going to make some statements in some of these other videos. Let's see.
I was fortunate enough to get some help.
32 years.
You understand what I'm saying? I was fortunate enough to, somebody to come help me. Maybe a lot of people can get some help from this.
Man.
And if there's anything that I can do, I'm there for these people, man, because I suffered. I suffered for 32 years, for nothing.
Maurice Hastings is actually someone Andrew Wilson knew from prison. So they were friends, and Andrew told us that he strongly suspected that Maurice was also innocent. It's kind of a full circle story in a way, and it's really, really wonderful that Andy made this decision to do this donation, and we were able to pay it forward so quickly.
But I just want to enjoy my life while I have it, and I just want to move forward. Thank you very much.
America is built on godly principles, fairness, and it's important that we get to that or get back to it, because you have some people that's suffering. You have children that's missed their parents, parents that missed their children, and it's important that this really we really invest time and resources in this, because this can restore life.
Man, I gotta have that clap going for this guy, man. Can you imagine? What if he didn't donate that money? Man, that man right there might not even have his freedom. That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. I mean, it might be it might be for publicity. I don't know. It makes you wonder. Toward the future of forensic science, LAIP works in partnership and collaboration with scientists and students at the California Forensic Science Institute, led by Dr. Kathy Roberts and Cal State LA School of Criminal Justice and Criminalistics, with the Hertzberg Davis Forensic Science Center. CFSI scientists and students collaborate with LAIP attorneys to test the viability, reliability, and accuracy of evidence used to convict LAIP clients. To heal and protect our communities at LAIP, we believe in a criminal legal system that recognizes the inherent dignity of all people. We believe in the possibility of a criminal legal system that is not infected by racial bias and does not criminalize poverty, mental illness, or drug addiction, and that seeks to reduce harm, reconcile individuals, address trauma, and rebuild those individuals, communities, and institutions that have been damaged by crime and our society's response to it. Wow. Join us. LAIP's work is possible only due to the generous contribution of Andrew Leander Wilson, who was exonerated in 2017 after spending 32 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Join in Andy's legacy by supporting LAIP today. Wow. Wow. It's too bad it got cut off. I mean, it may be small, and maybe it is, but you know what? Hey, we're hearing about it, right? And look at this. I mean, I'm not reading the books, but damn, it sounds to me like the dude that was exonerated is the only reason that this thing exists. Shout out to him again. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to him again. I mean, yo, making waves in the ocean of truth and justice. Thank you, Katrina Miller, contribution call out for becoming a YouTube member. Appreciate that. And thank you for all that you do for the true crime community too, Katrina. Appreciate you very much. Man, we have contract for pro bono cases. If we win, we get it. I can too, you know, man. It may, Danny, it may be, but I mean, you can tell that lady cares, you know. Where is she at? This lady right here. Oh, come on. Why is it?
Had nothing to do with. When I first met him in prison, I was immediately struck by how serene, how thoughtful.
Man, you can tell she cares. I'm sorry. It might. I don't know. Isn't this crazy though? What if it was some kind of other evidence, right? Let's go to Law and Crime. Let's see what they have to say.
We're updating you in the case against convicted killer Scott Peterson, who was sentenced to life in prison for murdering his pregnant wife, Lacey, after she disappeared on Christmas Eve in 2002. Yeah. Well, the Los Angeles Innocence Project has taken up the case as the convicted killer seeks new DNA testing, according to court filings. Now, the Innocence Project works to exonerate those who have been in their position wrongfully convicted, generally through forensic and other scientific evidence. Now, according to the official statement from the LA Innocence Project, they say, quote, the Los Angeles Innocence Project represents Scott Peterson and is investigating his claim of actual innocence. We have no further comment at this time, end quote. Well, we here at the Law and Crime Network have obtained the motion in full, have sifted through it, have some issues here that we'd like to share with you. Let's go through this and break this down, and we'll talk about it on the other end. First of all, they've said the defendant, Scott Peterson, by and through counsel, Los Angeles Innocence Project, will move the court for an order directing the people, that is the state, to provide the requested post-conviction discovery he is entitled to under Penal Code Section 1054.9. They have also said in this motion is filed concurrently with Peterson's motion to file documents under seal and motion for DNA testing pursuant to Penal Code Section 1405. And one more quote from the motion. It was about 142 pages long. Mr. Peterson respectfully requests that the court grant this motion and direct the people, again, the state, to provide the requested discovery so that further investigation into the claims set forth in the pending petition can be conducted. So those are just a couple of the nuggets out of this beast of a motion. It actually plays out like three motions. Luckily, I have here with me two extra.
So there's 140 some pages. Let's go back to that. And I'm going to have the words up there on the screen. It has something to do with the people that robbed the house across the street and some van. It has something to do with some van and the robbery that took place across the street or something. And I want to say contribution call out, Nevada. Thank you so much for becoming a member again. The re-up. Loving it here, and we're loving having you. Thank you. Appreciate your support for the show and the community. Go enjoy that members-only content. Yeah, we're going to catch up. All right.
The defendant, Scott Peterson, by and through counsel, Los Angeles Innocence Project, will move the court for an order directing the people, that is the state, to provide the requested post-conviction discovery he is entitled to under Penal Code Section 1054.9. They have also said in this motion is filed concurrently with Peterson's motion to file documents under...
Oh, so Amy, are they saying that they didn't get all the discovery? Is that what's going on? They found blood in that van that could be hers. So is that something that wasn't released in the original discovery? Is that what it...
Seal and motion for DNA testing pursuant to Penal Code Section 1405. And one more quote from the motion. It was about 142 pages long. Mr. Peterson respectfully requests that the court grant this motion and direct the people, again, the state, to provide the requested discovery so that further investigation into the claims set forth in the pending petition can be conducted. So,
wow, yo, dude, hey, okay, listen. If her blood was in the van, I don't believe they they even tested it. So why not test it? Like they couldn't test. Oh, maybe back then they couldn't test it because of the technology. Now they can test it because of the technology. Oh, okay. Like it wasn't qualified DNA back in 2004, but in 2024, it could be qualified. Ah. Yes, I do have, we're going to be getting into one of those videos after this about Scott's behavior when he was from a behavior analysis person. Whatever you call him. Yeah.
Those are just a couple of the nuggets out of this this beast of emotion.
The
It
beast
plays out like 3.
Because so they could only get it. Is this this isn't available to the public or what?
Emotions. Luckily, I have here with me 2 experts to talk about this process. Brian Buckmeyer is here. He's a law and crime legal analyst, and joining him, Lara Uretzian. She was on the Scott Peterson defense team. So,
oh, cool. They got somebody that was on the defense team for Scott Peterson. Okay.
I've got to talk to you first here, Lara. Get your initial reaction to the motions being filed based on your understanding of the case better than most.
I mean, it's great. You've got the Los Angeles Innocence Project having shown not just an interest, but has taken on the case. And I mean, they don't take any case, right? There's plenty of cases out there, and there's plenty of people, thousands, who are claiming that they've been wrongfully convicted. But guess what? Of all of these cases, they've taken Scott Peterson's case, and that in itself is huge, and it speaks volumes. It basically means, and they usually only take cases where of individuals who have made credible claims of actual innocence. And when you read the paperwork that they filed, the documents that they filed with the court, it's very clear that they believe that he has been wrongfully convicted, and they're requesting for DNA testing on a number of items, and it's pretty clear where they're going with it as far as what the theory is.
So, Brian, you've read through this. We hear about, I think the Innocence Project as an entity has some credibility. And when we hear that they've taken on a case, you think, oh, okay, let's look at that. I think a lot of people would look at this case and say, you're nuts. I mean, we've seen this tried 1.5 times. We know this nationally, internationally detailed case. How is all of this stuff they claim in their motion missed, misinterpreted, held back from the defense? Give me your thoughts on the things you've read in this motion.
Yeah, so it's, as you said, it's 3 different motions that they've filed together. Bullet points, as you said, one to file documents under seal, one for retrying or retesting of evidence, or even testing evidence that was not tested to begin with for DNA, and then for additional discovery or discovery that might have been lost or damaged throughout the period of time. But I think I read it and I'm thinking, you know what? Let's check it out. At the very least.
Yeah, I mean, you got to.
Everyone who has watched this case, I will put it out there.
Okay, so maybe that's what they're doing, is they're taking so they're the ones that are doing it because they just want to see. They're not saying he's innocent, right? They're not coming out making a statement that he's innocent. They're just saying, yo, this stuff wasn't tested. It's a high-profile case. He's reached to us multiple times about testing this untested DNA evidence. Why not? I don't see. Shout out to the LA Innocence Project and shout out. It might come back and not, it might just look. It could be like this. It's a positive either way. It could be positive that it corrects the truth, or it can be a positive that it solidifies his guilt even more. So regardless, no matter what, if it gets tested, it's going to be a positive no matter what. Because if it comes out and it shows that it has nothing to do with her, boom. That's Nobody has to say, well, but what about that untested DNA? Yep, guess what? It already got tested, bro. He did it. He did it, you know? It could be like that. Shout out to them. Who says, hey, that to me right there, if that's about publicity for the LA Innocence Project, so be it, because you're doing what should have been done anyway. And it's not maybe LE's fault because the technology wasn't up to where where things can be tested. But now with the technology, damn straight, it should have been tested back then. It should be tested now. And if it takes the LA Innocence Project getting involved to get it tested, another round of applause. I ain't hating.
When this case happened, I was still in high school and didn't follow it as intensely as I think everyone else on the network did. But the questions that they have, the overarching theme is the investigation was narrowly focused on the guilt of Scott Peterson. They did not properly investigate, as we've heard before, the burglary across the street. That their belief is that Lacey Peterson witnessed this burglary, and they're saying they've got people who admitted to abducting her and then killing her to quote unquote shut her up.
What?
And that this orange van.
They have people admitting that? Hold on a minute. What? Did you go? Okay. I'm not that familiar with it. Ticket 44. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm not that familiar. So people admitted to kidnapping her, unaliving her. I'm just okay. So you haven't heard of that? Has anybody else? I seem to recall that there was a group of people kidnapping pregnant women in Northern California. It was my first year as a lawyer, so I was too busy to follow the case. How many guys have you have heard of that? The van and the people admitting that. My question is how many people have heard about people admitting to kidnapping her, unaliving her to get rid of her? Crime Solver says hasn't. Ed Stacy says no. What's up, Ed Stacy? The people that burglarized the house, says Amy. One of the people that committed the burglary allegedly admitted to unaliving her per the documents. And that's the van that has the blood that wasn't tested? You haven't heard of that? Never heard about a kidnapping? Never heard it? Never heard it? What's up, Ed Stacy, Mark B? Yeah, there's a van that's burnt. I have pictures of it. It was a red van and it was on fire.
They did not properly investigate, as we've heard before, the burglary across the street. That their belief is that Lacey Peterson witnessed this burglary, and they're saying they've got people who admitted to abducting her and then killing her to quote unquote shut her up. And that this orange van that witnesses identify as being at the location that was then later transported to an airport and burned. And there are presumptive tests of blood in that van. And they're asking to test that blood in the van, on the duct tape in the van, on the handles of the van, everywhere in the van, and say, let's see whose DNA it is. And at least at that point for me, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm kind of curious about the blood too, because if that blood is in there and that's Laci Peterson's, I think they've got a little bit of leg room here to run. The other thing that I thought was very interesting as well was they're arguing that the science that was used to measure the femur of Connor, the unborn child inside Laci, was incorrect. And that measurement was used to see when the time of death was. And they're arguing it should have been somewhere in early January, January 3rd, which feeds into their theory that Laci Peterson was kidnapped, held, and then her body was dumped much later. It's maybe a little sensational. It's a very intriguing. For me, I'm not sure what to believe at this point, but
whoa. So now they're claiming the van that was burned was found less than a mile from Laci's disappearance. So now they're claiming, whoa.
across the street, that their belief is that Laci Peterson witnessed this burglary, and they're saying they've got people who admitted to abducting her and then killing her to quote unquote shut her up, and that there's this van, this orange van that witnesses identify as being at the location that was then later transported to an airport and burned, and there are presumptive tests of blood in that van. And they're asking to test that blood in the van, on the duct tape in the van, on the handles of the van, everywhere in the van, and saying, let's see whose DNA it is. And at least at that point for me, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm kind of curious about the blood too, because if that blood is in there and that's Laci Peterson's, I think they've got a little bit of leg room here to run.
And they got way more leg room to run if her blood is in the frickin' van. If her blood is in the frickin' van. What's up, Jordan? I mean, this is crazy. See, I never watched the case like this, so I'm coming from like a different area than most people here. Cause I don't know, like this is, yo, how do you, like, you better test it. You better test it. This is crazy. And then the thing that they used to measure the TOD for the infant was what? So then it's...
The other thing that I thought was very interesting as well was they're arguing that the science that was used to measure the femur of Connor, the unborn child inside Laci, was incorrect, and that measurement was used to see when the time of death was, and they're arguing it should have been somewhere in early January, January 3rd, which feeds into their theory that Laci Peterson was kidnapped, held, and then her body was dumped much later.
So, okay, but wait a minute. Wasn't it during Christmas? Right? Didn't this happen during Christmas or something? So January 4th, that's only like 2 weeks. How much? I mean, how much is this thing really going to make a difference when it comes to whatever this tool or this thing he's talking about measuring? You know what I mean? Like, you're talking 2 weeks. I mean, really, is 2 weeks is but what is this? I don't understand why you're talking 2 weeks. Is it really gonna, like, is it that telling? Like 2 weeks?
Somewhere in early,
I could see like 2 months.
Early January, January 3rd, which feeds into their theory that Laci Peterson, a little bit of leg room here to run. The other thing that I thought was very interesting as well was they're arguing that the science that was used to measure the femur of Connor,
See?
the unborn child inside Lacey, was incorrect. And that measurement was used to see when the time of death was. And
like, how do you even know? How do you know the baby wasn't in the stomach? How do you know the baby wasn't outside of the stomach? How do you know how long they were in there? All of that stuff affects whatever measurement you're gonna test, right? Like, what did they know that the baby was in or out before this happened? I mean, what? I don't understand. I don't understand.
And they're arguing it should have been somewhere in early January 3rd, which feeds into their theory that Lacey Peterson was kidnapped, held, and then her body was dumped much later.
Oh, wow.
It's maybe a little sensational. It's a very intriguing. For me, I'm not sure what to believe at this point.
How do they even know?
I'm saying, let's test it and let's find out.
How do they even know?
Two things come to mind for me, as Brian has laid out there. You've got the DNA issue. Here we are 22 years post-crime. So there are scientific changes. There's also degraded evidence, if there is anything left to retest. But then you have this whole van burglary abduction story.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
When you think of those two issues, which to you is the strongest, if either? And what do you expect to see as we learn more about these arguments from the Innocence Project?
Well, the issues are not separate. They're very much connected. So the DNA testing is also connected to the burglary, because it's very clear where they're going with it. If you look at what they're asking to be tested, they're asking basically to have items that were left by the burglars in the Medina's house. Now, the Medinas are the neighbors who lived across the street from the Petersons, and their house was burglarized. Now, there was a dispute as far as the date of the burglary, and the defense's position was always that the burglary did occur on the morning of Lacey Peterson's disappearance, which was December 24th of 20.
So it did, right? Because didn't they say that it didn't?
As far as the date of the burglary, and the defense's position was always that the burglary did occur on the morning of Lacey Peterson's disappearance, which was December 24th of 2002. The prosecution position was that no. The burglars are saying they did it on the 25th, right when all the media frenzy was going on and the media were parked across from the Peterson house. And for some reason, the prosecution and the detectives decided to believe these burglars.
What?
And their statement that it happened on the 25th. Despite the fact that there were witnesses who had seen a van outside the Medina's house on the morning of Lacey's disappearance, and people saying that a woman who was pregnant was forced into a van. I mean, there was all sorts of evidence, right? And a van was found the next day, burnt intentionally, and that's the orange van that they're also including in their DNA testing. So I can see very clearly what's going on. They're trying to connect the burglary or people involved in the burglary to Lacey's disappearance and Connor's disappearance and murder, because they're trying to test what was found in the Medina's house left behind by the burglars. And they're testing also items that were found near the bodies, on the bodies after the recovery, and in the van, including the mattress that had blood on it. And there's pieces of it, even though parts of it are burned, but there's enough, hopefully, for retesting. It was tested at some point, but they want to retest it.
Okay, so you, on the original defense team, you must have explored all of these things at that time. Why did nothing come of that?
The defense team did not have all that information. And since the conviction, the investigation never stopped. It's been ongoing, and new evidence has come about. Clearly some people have talked. So there's new evidence, and based on the new evidence, they're going back and redoing some of these things. And again, the Innocence Project doesn't just get involved in any case. There's got to be enough here for them to be convinced that they're dealing with someone who was wrongfully convicted. And remember, the Scott Peterson case, now my understanding is there's also evidence that the burglary, there's enough evidence now to show that the burglary did occur at the time of her a disappearance. And Lacey was the kind of person, she was one of those, you know, the type of person, if she saw something wrong, she would confront. And the suspicion is that she clearly confronted him. And of course, to prevent being caught, the theory is that they abducted her and then killed her. And it was public knowledge where Peterson had gone. This idea that there was a lot of evidence against Peterson is not necessarily true. Yes, they were trying to build a circumstantial case. This case was televised, but then the cameras were not in the courtroom. So a lot of it was, you know, obviously being covered by reporters and the media. And the circumstantial evidence and the prosecution theory was that Scott Peterson had killed his wife at night on the eve of the 23rd, or possibly early morning hours of the 24th, then in the house where they live. Then he had wrapped her up in a tarp, put her in a toolbox in the back of his truck, and then the allegation was that he drove that truck to his work warehouse, where he spent about an hour to put together a woodworking type device. And then he went on the internet and he was doing some searches, sent a work email while supposedly his wife's dead body, the corpse, is in his truck. Then again, in broad daylight, drives to the Berkeley Marina, and again in broad daylight, carries this heavy body, puts it in the small boat, and dumps it in the bay. And this was, of course, everybody knew where he'd been. It was publicized from day one. And there was no forensic evidence, zero forensic evidence tying him to this alleged murder that they were alleging he did. It was sensationalized. They focused on the affair. They focused on some of the lies, and basically convicted him because there was so much hatred towards him. It was palpable, even in the courtroom at the time. It was, I mean, the entire world. It wasn't just nationally followed. The entire world was following this case, and he was the most hated guy at the time.
No doubt about it. Never underestimate the power of dislikability. So, Brian, is this a situation where there are violations by the prosecution, the state, to turn over what they had at that time, or is it new evidence to them as well?
It's a bit of both. If you look at the document, they are making allegations of Brady violations. So Brady violations being that exculpatory information that was not turned over at the appropriate time. And they're also asking for evidence based on their review of the defense's file and just saying, hey, some of it seems to be missing. Some of it suggests that there's other information there, and we're just trying to collect it. I think you made reference of a 142-page motion. That's the DNA motion. The discovery request motion is closer to the tune of 432 pages. And so it looks like they're really trying to collect evidence and in some regards retry this case, and in other regards try to retry the case with the appropriate evidence they feel should have been there to begin with. But when I think about cases like this, you always get pushback. You always get, well, we already found him guilty. Well, we already have the evidence here. And what I would respond to that would be, are you any more sure of Scott Peterson's guilt than the majority of the country was for the Central Park Five?
That's a good question.
Because the Innocence Project has shown us time and time again that society has gotten it wrong. And my position, especially as a defense attorney, has always been, my father didn't teach me much, but he's a general contractor. And what he always said was, we measure twice and cut once. And if there's an opportunity to measure again to make sure we got it right, then measure again and make sure that the person in prison is truly the person that belongs in there. And if we measure a second time and that's not the right person, then we find justice for that person. But don't come to me when the Innocence Project proves someone's innocent and cheer on the hard work of this project after they've done the job. If you're not going to be there when they're in the trenches fighting to try to prove someone's innocence. Take the time to review the evidence, have an open mind, and if there are questions that need to be answered, ask them.
And that's what it is right now. A whole bunch of questions with some alleged new evidence, DNA and otherwise, that will get Scott Peterson out of prison. We are going to keep an eye on this. Thank you both for...
Woo! That's crazy. That's crazy. All right, we're going to watch... I can't stand Cuomo. But we're going to watch. This is Mark Geragos, his old defense attorney, and he's going to be discussing the LA Innocence Project. If you're not familiar with it, we went into it in the beginning of the show. This is going to be Geragos responding on Cuomo, and then we're going to get into Dr. G explains when it comes to the psychologist analyzing Scott Peterson's body language, the one that he had with Diane Sawyer. If you guys remember that interview, I've never watched the whole thing before, but I do remember it from seeing the angle and the lighting and things like that. So he's going to be analyzing that. And then we're also going to watch that. But if we watch the whole thing, then we'll just go to something else. But this is Geragos discussing this just a couple days ago. He says no way that he committed this crime.
News we have in this case, boy, oh boy, dominated us. I was at ABC News. Diane Sawyer got the big interview with Scott Peterson. This drama and intrigue.
Yeah.
Now, as he serves life in prison without possibility of parole, he originally got the death penalty. They backed off it. Why? Not because they didn't think he did it, but because they thought the instructions were wrong and that maybe there had been some bias on the death penalty jury, meaning some of them weren't being straight or weren't properly instructed when it came to how they felt about the death penalty. So why would he get a new trial? That's where the Innocence Project comes in, okay? Now, they are not just some new lawyer making statements, okay? The LA Innocence Project is no joke, okay? In over 40% of the cases that they take on, they get their clients off. Why? They were one of the first to start using DNA to change decisions that had been made in court. So why are they taking on Peterson? Let's bring in the high-profile criminal defense attorney who represented Peterson at his murder trial, no less than Mark Geragos.
Mark
Good to see you, Counselor.
Good to see you too,
That's
Chris. And I'm just going to do one little correction. Sorry for this.
Go ahead.
The death penalty was reversed because we objected in real time to Judge DeLucchi eliminating jurors who said they had a problem with the death penalty. That was inexplicable at the time, was not the law at the time. I'll never understand how you could reverse the death penalty by having jurors that were eliminated from serving on that jury, yet you could hold up the conviction. Well, neither here nor there. At least now the Innocence Project is going to take this up.
There's a younger Mark Geragos there. Probably better looking now, I would.
Whoa, that's him from back then? Holy shit. Well, I guess it was 20 years ago, right? Damn. That's interesting. So I wonder if he's going to be part of the whole thing.
Would say, why did this case haunt you for so long afterwards?
You know, you've heard me privately and publicly tell you that the amount of alcohol therapy I've engaged in since this verdict is considerable, because I like to think that I knew the evidence in real time better than anybody. I lived this case for well over a year and a half. I cross-examined virtually every single witness, along with my co-counsel, Pat Harris, who's sitting there in that picture as well. And I can tell you that there just is no way that not only that this case was not proved beyond a reasonable doubt, but there was no way that he was good for this. You get a feeling, having done this for over 40 years now, I will tell you, you know when somebody is good for it. This made no sense whatsoever. I understand the brouhaha, the presumption of guilt, we did focus groups, we did studies, we did all kinds of testing beforehand. Joelle and Demetrius told me that she had never seen a prejudgment rate of guilt amongst a population like there was in this case. We knew what we were up against, but at the same time, if you're like me and you have great faith in the system, you think that you can overcome that. You think that by testing each witness, by basically dismantling the prosecution case, that would have been enough. And clearly it was not enough. And that's what haunts me.
Well, but there was reasons for the presumption, right? I mean, there was a lot of drama. His behavior before she was dead and after he was dead was highly suspicious. In some of these pictures, he's got blonde hair, which people believed was part of his efforts to try to run away. He had the girlfriend. The girlfriend said he had said that his wife was dead before anybody knew that she was dead. So there was a lot of stink on him that went into this. That's the girlfriend there for people.
This is a good conversation here. If you want the link to this video here, you can have it for your own playlist.
Who don't remember.
But
it's a good video.
Amber Fry was
what's fascinating?
Go ahead.
He's calling it out.
And you know what's fascinating? I tell this story all the time because it's true. It's a little bit apocryphal, but I say every single time somebody would confront me in the last 20 some odd years, I would say, well, the blonde hair, that was because he was still trying to do his job before he was arrested, and he was trying to disguise himself from the media. They said, well, why was he headed toward Mexico? He wasn't headed towards Mexico. He was going north on the 5 freeway to Canada. They said, well, why did he tell Amber Fry that his wife was missing before she was missing? They said the testimony by Amber was that he had never said he loved her. He'd only seen her 5 to 7 times or something like that, a handful of times. And that was hardly the motivation for him to kill his wife and his unborn son.
Hey, thank you for watching.
Huh? I mean, he asked him why. He said, why? And he answered it. That's interesting. That was a good video. All right. This is one. Dr. G explains. And then we're going to go into a special. A little mini 5-parter that's about an hour or so. This is the Dr. G that I'm talking about. If you're not subbed to him, here's the link. And I'll drop the link to the video here in chat in a second. And then you can go show some love on that video that we're about to watch too, if you like. What's up, Jackie? Hope you've had a good weekend too. His mistress got so much money off of this case. For real? Oh, what'd she do? Like have like a what, movies, book? But hey, didn't somebody, wasn't it Nicole Kessinger that said she didn't want to end up like Amber Fry? Or is it Frey or Fry? Was it Nicole Kessinger that said she didn't want to end up like Amber Frey? Books for sure. She turned against him and recorded all his creepy calls. She Googled what? She Googled her. Love Dr. G? I never checked out Dr. G before. I just came across it while I was doing some of my stuff. Denise says guilty. What's up, Denise? Thank you for hopping in. Yeah, I never checked out one of his videos before. Fry? So it's Fry. Fry. Ah, okay. It's pronounced Fry. She Googled her asking how much money she... What? I didn't mention Chris Watts today when I mentioned all the cases I had prepped for, did I? Yeah, I did mention it. Because I do. We should have one of those shows soon, too. What's up, Cyber Warrior? Yeah, we're going to check out this video from Dr. G. Dr. G here. So let me drop this at Dr. G. There we go. So there's his link. We're going to check out. He's going to go into Oh, thank you, Denise. What's up in Revel? He's going to go into the Diane Sawyer interview, and we're going to watch that too. But I'm thinking he's going to go through the whole thing. And then we'll just end up going to the little mini special. And then we got plenty of more stuff the next few shows as we're going to do this. So let's see here. This is the video. Here's the link. And go show some love. Hit the like. Drop a comment. It's the free way to help Dr. G out. And there's the link for that. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the like myself as we get into it.
Here, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing Scott Peterson right here on Flashback Forensics.
All right.
In 2002, Scott Peterson was convicted for the murder of his wife, Lacey Peterson. At the time, she was 8.5 months pregnant. At that time, he was sentenced to death, which has since been overturned, so now he just has life without parole. He also attempted to get a new trial, which didn't happen. What we're going to be looking at today are interviews before he was arrested. He was a suspect during these interviews, but he had not yet been arrested. Before we get started, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. This interview is from 2002. It's with Diane Sawyer. It was when his wife was still considered missing. We're going to just jump right in.
I think everybody sitting at home wants the answer to the same question. Did you murder your wife?
No, I did not. And I had absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance. And
is he
right,
drugged?
So one of the things that we're already going to notice is his tone. Now,
yeah,
when there's a televised interview, obviously everybody can feel a little awkward at first, so I'm not going to judge and base too much on this, but I do want you to consider. He kind of half chuckled, saying, "No, I didn't do it."
Yeah, he's like drugged or something.
Of murdering your wife, or even the suggestion of that, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little
Chris
bit of
Coleman
frustration, looking a little bit offended. He is going to be trying to stay as calm as possible throughout this whole interview. But watch this again in the context of it being suggested that you did something to your wife. Check this out.
I did not. And I had absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance. And use the word murder. And yeah,
he did.
And that is a possibility.
What
Just
the
look
fuck?
at how strikingly strange
it's like he's fucked up.
He's
Yeah.
saying that it's possible that his wife and unborn child have been murdered.
It's like
He's
he's
got a
fucked
huge
up.
Smile across his face. I think that what his plan probably was, my assumption was, and we're going to get more into this as we go, would be that he wants to come across as friendly and not aggressive, and that he wants to come across as calm. I think those would have been his two intentions. So come across as friendly and non-threatening and calm. But he overplayed that hand. Even in the first few seconds, we're seeing an incredibly strange and peculiar way to behave. Let's just watch this first section again.
Absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance. And use the word murder. And yeah, I mean, that is a possibility.
And he also said, you use the word murder, and yeah, I mean, it's not that he's confessing necessarily, but it's interesting that he is acknowledging it in that way. It's very unusual.
It's not one we're ready to accept, and it creeps in my mind late at night.
And I talked about this a bit during the Chris Watts interview, if you've watched that video, which is the awkward smiles. The smiles are not because he's feeling uncomfortable. In a grave situation like this, the awkwardness of smiling on accident is going to get hidden. I see a lot of people comment about Duper's delight. I don't think that that's what it is at this point. I think
Duper's
this
delight?
is an attempt to try to seem friendly and non-threatening and not seem like somebody who's capable of the kind of anger that would be required to murder somebody. So what this says...
Oh, so like he's trying to play super chillax so people don't think that he has the aggression that somebody would need to commit the crime. He looks to me like he's doped up on something. She comes at him. Oh, for real. He looks like he's doped up. It looks like he's doped up. I'll never understand. One of these interviews while his wife is missing, his phone rings, he just turns the phone up. What? Wow. High on life. Proud to be 19. Holly says he is gross. Probably on some nerve meds. I mean, doesn't he look doped up? Like he's like, yeah, like some kind of psych meds or some shit.
This to me is that the degree of anger that he's capable of showing is something that he doesn't like people to see, but I think that it is extremely high.
Like he's going to slur his speech or something.
Cold and calculated murder, that it was a violent and angry murder would be my assumption based
nerve
on
meds.
And early in the morning and during the day, all we can think about is the right resolutions.
Is that when bath salts started to become a problem? Was back then? Is that what he was doing? Bath salts?
Wasn't a cold and calculated murder. That it was a
and
my assumption based on what
and early in the morning and during the day, all we can think about is the right resolutions to find her.
But as you know, increasingly in the public, suspicion has turned on you.
Yes, definitely.
Did you ever hit her? Did you ever injure her?
No. My God, no. Violence towards women is.
Where's the eye contact?
It's problematic, and I'll explain why. So he's not saying, I would never hurt Lacey. I would never do something like that. He's just saying very generally, violence against women is not okay. Once again, he's building a case of, look, I'm not the kind of guy who could do this. This is not the denial of someone who didn't do it. This is the denial of someone who is trying to use impression management, who's trying to build a case for why he's not the kind of person who would do this. So that's a mistake. You know, the fact that he's not personalizing it, the fact that he's not directly responding to the question, saying, no, I would never hurt Lacey, saying, no, violence against women is not okay. That is trying to garner favor with people thinking, well, that's what people want to hear, so that's what I'll say. Strategically, it's a mistake. Listen to him say this again.
Did you ever hit her? Did you ever injure her?
No. My God, no. Violence towards women is unapproachable. It is the most disgusting act to me. And I know that suspicion has turned me. And it's turned me, one, because I'm her husband. And that's a natural thing. And I've heard all the statistics on all the news shows about that being, you know, someone that a husband, ex-husband, a boyfriend.
All right. One thing that you're noticing, this is just like Ted Bundy and Chris Watts. I talk about the eyes a lot. That the direction people look is pretty immaterial in my opinion. I know some people disagree with that, but the direction he's looking off to the side and all that stuff, I don't really attribute any meaning to that. I do attribute meaning to him closing his eyes at times. So just watch when he does that. He does slow eye closes. And I don't know if that's him shielding his eyes. I don't know if that's him attempting to appear calm, but we are going to see a pattern with that. Let's just watch that again.
Being, you know, someone that a husband, ex-husband, a boyfriend, that is statistically.
And you'll notice when he said a husband. So in a sense, he's acknowledging that a husband could do this. He obviously is a husband that did it. So let's watch him say this again.
The statistics on all the news shows about that being, you know, someone that a husband, ex-husband, a boyfriend.
So he waited till he got through the word husband to open his eyes. I don't think that was conscious. I think that's unconscious. I think that his body was trying to protect itself, because oftentimes closing our eyes, crossing our arms, blocking our bodies is a way to feel protected. And so I think in this point, he's trying to protect himself because he knows that once suspicion fully turns on him and they have more evidence, he's in trouble.
That is statistically one who would be responsible for her disappearance. And I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
Did you ever hit her? Did you ever injure her?
I forgot your question.
I was answering your question because of the suspicion that's been turned to me. And it turned to me because...
So he already has points that he wants to make. Once again, this is not an innocent person who is trying to give a genuine interview. He has points that he thinks are important to get across to the public. So he's forgetting questions or he's coming back to things because he wants to make sure he gets to these points. Aside from the fact that he denied doing it, he's trying to say certain things that I think he believes matter.
Of the inappropriate romantic.
So one thing that may be obvious is how calm he is. So he seems very calm, very measured. Like I said, this is impression management. He wants to show people, how could such a calm, soft-spoken person commit such a heinous act. So this is intentional, and that's something to pay attention to at times. It's not always really meaningful. Sometimes people are introverted and quiet. That doesn't necessarily mean that they committed a crime. But in his situation, he's showing such a measured approach. He's showing so little emotion. This seems like an overt attempt to do impression management, to make people see him the way he wants them to.
Came forward.
I'm glad she did.
You are?
Definitely.
All right, so if you'll notice when he said, I'm glad she did, watch this facial expression.
Fry came forward.
I'm glad.
All right, so he raised his eyebrows. That's usually a look of surprise. So I believe that he's surprised that she came forward. And so that's what we're seeing, is that he didn't anticipate that when he talked to her, when he told her the things that he did. So he was surprised that she came forward.
She did.
You are?
Definitely.
Why?
It's the appropriate thing to do. It really shows what a person of character she is. And it.
Now, we just saw a half-cocked smile. Watch this.
Shows what a person of character.
Yeah, like
So
the Joker.
You see this one-sided smile. You've probably heard me talk about this before. That's a sign of contempt. That shows that he's feeling contemptuous towards her. This is his own subtle ways of showing his own anger and contempt. It may look a little bit like he's smiling on both sides, but to me it looks more dramatically on one side. As we know, one-sided smile is contempt.
Character she is, and it allows us to get back looking for
A one-sided
Did
smile.
you tell her that you were not married?
I did. And then when Lacey disappeared, I called her, and admittedly it wasn't immediately. It was a couple days after Lacey's.
Now, one thing you'll also notice is his gaze at Diane Sawyer. He does not take his eyes off of her very often. We see this oftentimes with psychopaths. They stare through people. Now, he might offset that a little bit because he has more of a...
He wasn't a
for
couple
lack of better
minutes
terms,
ago,
more of a
dude.
normal look. And sometimes when people have this, we don't
Now he
notice when
is.
they are staring intensely. Jorn Vandersloot did the same thing. He had sort of a boyish look, and he would stare deeply at people, but it might not be obvious. And to some people, I'm sure they notice, but I don't think it's as obvious to everyone just because of the way he looks. I think Scott
Anybody
Peterson
has
very
any
much the
info,
same way.
please send it
But
down,
in many ways,
to this
he
here.
has his eyes on Diane Sawyer because he feels defensive and needs to protect himself in this situation. And very rarely, although occasionally, very rarely does he take his eyes off of her.
Disappearance. I telephoned her and told her the truth.
The truth?
That I was married, that Lacey's disappeared.
What?
She didn't know about it at that point.
That's a lie, right?
But Fry
That's a
says
lie, right?
she first found out about Lacey from the news, not from Scott.
Were you in love with her?
All right, so that was sort of a half-committed no, and he closed his eyes. I'm not sure that he was in love with her, but he didn't like this question. At least that's what his facial expression says.
Is this the first time? Are there others out there? No. There's no
Yeah,
one
'cause he
else who
didn't.
can come forward.
Whoa.
I owe tremendous.
But he hates this idea that that there could be someone else that could come forward.
There's no one else who can come forward.
See, as I've said
Wow.
before, we close our eyes when we think or see something we don't like. I don't know if it's just the concept or the idea that someone else could say something, but he really does not like this idea because he knows there's more to be said. So I think the idea that anybody else could have anything negative to say about him is scary, and he doesn't like it.
Forward.
No. I owe a tremendous apology to everyone.
All right. You'll notice a head shake. He doesn't believe what he's saying. Watch this. This is very subtle.
I owe a tremendous apology to.
See, I owe a tremendous apology to everyone. He doesn't believe that for a second.
I told my wife.
When?
In early December.
Did it cause a rupture in the marriage?
It was not a positive, obviously.
So he doesn't want to acknowledge the word rupture because it's a strong, loaded, powerful word.
Yeah,
that could imply that he's capable of violence. That could imply that he's capable of doing something. And because he's calculated, he's coming back and saying, no, he's trying to put different words to it because he's trying so hard to do this impression management. He's trying so hard to give a specific impression of how he wants to look to people. But watch his reaction to this again.
Did it cause a rupture in the marriage?
It was not a positive, obviously. It's
Well, yeah.
Right, so he's acknowledging it's not a positive, but he won't say something as severe as rupture.
Inappropriate.
See, mild words, inappropriate. he will not say that it caused conflict or it caused a fight. That in and of itself is suspicious, because obviously anybody that's going to tell their pregnant wife that, and Diane Sawyer gets to this in a second, but anybody that's going to tell their pregnant wife that they had an affair,
Yeah.
it is going to cause conflict. It is not going to be that it was inappropriate or anything so mild. So once again,
yeah, bro, your shit would be on the fucking lawn, dude.
that in and of itself is suspicious.
What the
that he's
hell?
refusing to acknowledge any level of real, genuine conflict.
But it was not something that we weren't dealing with.
A lot of arguing?
No. I can't say that even she was okay with the idea, but it wasn't anything that would break us apart.
There wasn't a lot of anger?
No.
Yep. See, once again, she wasn't okay with the idea. I mean, what a ridiculous way to phrase this.
Do you really expect people to believe that an 8.5-month pregnant woman learns her husband has had an affair and is saintly and casual about it? Accommodating? Makes a peace with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know. No one knows our relationship but us.
So here's a place of comfort for him. No one knows our relationship but us. That gives him power, because ultimately that is true. If there's nothing that people can prove, if nobody has them on video talking, no one knows their relationship with them. So for him, this is a position of power. So he feels comfortable saying what he wants, because it is impossible to prove what their relationship was like at this moment. So he can say, yeah, it was. And you have to believe it is however I say it is.
And that's at peace with it, not happy about it.
Why did you tell her?
It was the right thing.
So that almost sounded like he was asking a question. It was the right thing. Listen to the tone of his voice, which means that obviously that's not why he told her, because it was the right thing. Listen to this again.
Why did you tell her?
It was the right thing.
Because again, you know that people sitting at home have imagined that either you were in love with someone else, therefore you decided to get rid of this entanglement, namely your...
All right, so that's a point of weakness for him. The people think that he's in love with someone else. Watch his eyes close when she says that.
Either you were in love with someone else, therefore you decided...
And his eyes are so slow when he closes them. It's so exaggerated. So I don't know if this is him shielding his eyes or if it's his attempt to be very, very calm. But obviously, there's a response there. I mean, we're seeing it, so it's meaningful in some way.
To get rid of this entanglement, namely your wife and your child. Or there was just an angry confrontation.
Neither of those was the case. It's that simple.
He insisted all was well between him and Lacey.
Tell me about the state of your marriage. What kind of marriage was it?
God, I mean, the first word that comes to mind is, glorious. I mean, we took care of each other very well. She was amazing. She is amazing.
So I'm sure you caught that. She was amazing. She is amazing. He caught it very quickly, and he said it fast enough that maybe some people wouldn't notice, but saying she was amazing. He is talking about her in the past tense. Listen to this.
She was amazing. She is amazing.
Another story that is out there is that the kitchen was spotless. And in fact, there was still a wet mop around, which indicated somebody had cleaned something very recently.
Lacey was mopping the floors when I left that morning. Yes, the house is spotless. She had a cleaning lady on Monday, the 23rd.
So this is an area that's confident for him. You're seeing less of the eye closing. He likes this part of the story. He feels very good about this, probably because if things are spotless, then that means they didn't find anything. And he can just say, well, we're just very tidy people. We just clean a lot.
So if the cleaning lady had been there, why have to clean again?
Dog, 2 cats. Muddy backyard. She mopped those floors every day.
Yeah, look at this smirk. He feels very happy with himself about this answer because he believes this is a convincing response. I feel okay about that. People have to believe me, and there's no way to prove otherwise. Look at the smirk that emerges right here.
Muddy backyard. She mopped those floors every day.
See, great excuse. So he feels like when somebody has murdered someone else, they basically are going to have a mental checklist of all the things that are weak points for them. So no DNA evidence or the kitchen's clean. Check, and so he's going to feel really good about being able to provide something that he thinks is a comprehensive and coherent answer. Whereas earlier, when there's certain questions he's being asked that he doesn't like as much, like one about whether or not they're having conflict, you're going to see more of the eye closing. You're going to see more of him disliking what he's being asked.
And I emptied the bucket when I returned.
Go back to a couple of other questions people have. I've heard so many people say, Christmas Eve, you have a very pregnant wife, and you decide to go fishing?
Mm-hmm.
What did that say about the two of you?
Right?
We had plans that evening with Mom, Lacey's mom, over at her house. Frankly, Christmas preparation.
So you see the licking of the lips. What this probably says is that when this question got asked, adrenaline starts coursing a little bit. It's drying his mouth out a little bit. It's a very subtle thing to notice, and certainly people are capable of licking their lips. That doesn't always guarantee that they're lying. But when we see a change, I haven't seen him do that a lot throughout this interview. So when we see a change, we pay attention to it. So this question's one that maybe he feels less confident about than the spotless kitchen.
Her house. Frankly, Christmas preparations were done.
What did you got her for Christmas?
Oh, a Louis Vuitton wallet. But preparations were made. Her plan for the day was to prepare gingerbread cookies. My day was open to either play golf or go fishing. I chose fishing that day, which is, a choice I made, and I obviously regret now. I could just decide to stay home. This would not have happened.
Once again, the slight smirk emerges as he talks about some of these things. I don't know if he feels like he's performing well necessarily, but he feels pretty good about something as this is continuing to go on. Maybe he feels like he's getting out of the danger zone.
You haven't mentioned your son.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. Once again, he's referring to things in the past tense, and he's correcting himself. That's the second time he's done that. Listen to this again.
It's so hard.
Their baby boy was due on February 16th.
Tell me about the nursery.
Can't go in there. That door is closed until there's someone to put in there.
And maybe it's just me, but his level of calmness is annoying me. And maybe that's just my own personal reaction, but he has zero passion about any of this stuff. So for someone who is trying to find their wife, obviously we're seeing what appears to be, maybe he's been crying or maybe he's trying to at this point, but we're seeing him maintain such a sense of reservation and being so subdued. To me, it's almost frustrating to watch.
It's ready.
Are you afraid police will arrest you?
No. I know there's no basis. I had nothing.
So right now we are seeing a tear run down his face, but we have yet to see any face that actually shows sadness. Sometimes we see faces with no tears. Now we're seeing tears with no demonstration whatsoever that he's actually feeling or experiencing sadness in any real way.
Nothing to do with their disappearance. So there's no possible evidence or anything like that.
So this is basically the end of the interview. Hopefully watching this gives you a basis for better understanding how to observe people.
Hold on one second. Let me go back just a little bit here. Because right here, he wasn't.
Lacey's mom over her house. Frankly, Christmas preparation.
So you see the licking of the lips. What this probably says is that when this question got asked, adrenaline starts coursing a little bit. It's drying his mouth out a little bit. It's a very subtle thing to notice, and certainly people are capable of licking their lips. That doesn't always guarantee that they're lying. But when we see a change, I haven't seen him do that a lot throughout this interview. So when we see a change, we pay attention to it. So this question's one that maybe he feels less confident about than the spotless kitchen.
Her house.
Huh.
Frankly, Christmas preparations were done.
What did you got her for Christmas?
Oh, a Louis Vuitton wallet. But preparations were made. Her plan for the day was to prepare gingerbread cookies. My day was open to either play golf or go fishing. I chose fishing that day, which is, a choice I made, and I obviously regret now. I could just decide to stay home. That's what would have happened.
Once again, the slight smirk emerges as he talks about some of these things. I don't know if he feels like he's performing well necessarily, but he feels pretty good about something as this is continuing to go on. Maybe he feels like he's getting out of the danger zone.
You haven't mentioned your son.
It's so hard.
So she just waited.
Hard. Once again, he's referring to things in the past tense, and he's correcting himself. That's the second time he's done that. Listen to this again.
It's so hard.
It was like he was waiting for her to say something else, and then he just was like, well, I better say something.
Their baby boy was due on February 16th.
Tell me about the nursery.
Can't go in there. That door is closed for someone to put in there. But,
and maybe it's just me, but his level of calmness is annoying me. And maybe that's just my own personal reaction, but he has zero passion about any of this stuff. So for someone who is trying to find their wife, obviously we're seeing what appears to be, maybe he's been crying or maybe he's trying to at this point, but we're seeing him maintain such a sense of reservation and being so subdued. To me, it's almost frustrating to watch.
It's ready.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Are you afraid police will arrest you?
No. I know there's no basis. I had nothing.
So right now we are seeing a tear run down his face, but we have yet to see any face that actually shows sadness. Sometimes we see faces with no tears. Now we're seeing tears with no demonstration whatsoever that he's actually feeling or experiencing sadness in any real way.
Thing to do with their disappearance. So there's no possible evidence or anything like that.
So this is basically the end of the interview. Hopefully watching this gives you a basis for better understanding how to observe people like Scott Peterson. When people have acted in such psychopathic ways and have committed such atrocious and heinous crimes, there is always a certain type of personality and behavior that they tend to fall into. For him, his is to be withdrawn and neutral and to show as little emotion as humanly possible. But if you watch with a critical eye, you can understand what his attempt was, what he was trying to do, and what was missing. When people have real emotions, when people have crises, it does not look like this. And before we wrap things up, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe so you can see more content just like this.
And there's the link to the video again. Shout out Dr. G Explains. Thank you. That was very interesting to kind of go through there. This here is a video from Scott Peterson's parents discussing why they feel he is innocent.
When your child has been murdered, it's a nightmare. But when your child is accused of murder, that is also a nightmare. And that's the situation for the parents of Scott Peterson. He's on trial now in California for the murder of his wife, Lacey, and their unborn son. The Petersons have rarely done interviews and have not talked publicly at all since the trial began a month ago. But Recently, they did speak to Barbara. The judge has imposed a gag order on speaking about details of the case, but the Petersons can certainly talk about the son they say is innocent.
In this Redwood City Courthouse, the trial of Scott Peterson for the savage murder of his wife Lacey and their unborn son Connor is expected to last as long as 6 months. For the families of the victims and the accused, the case...
How long did it last for? If it was expected to... Man, that's crazy. It was expected to last 6 months? But yet, the Kohberger's trial is only supposed to last 6 weeks? What? How long? Okay. How long was... Does anybody know how long this trial was?
and their unborn son Connor
6
is expected to last as long as 6 months.
What?
For the families of the victims and the accused, the case has taken a heavy toll. Scott's father, Lee, who owns a small packaging business, and mother, Jackie, are convinced of their son's innocence. Hundreds of miles away from their San Diego home, they and others in the Peterson family have pledged to remain at Scott's side, whatever the emotional and financial cost. As the case unfolds, the Petersons must reconcile two versions of their son. One as a wrongly accused husband who grieves for his murdered wife and unborn son, and the other an adulterer turned cold-blooded monster. Why don't you sit right here? We met with the Petersons a few miles from where the trial is taking place. They seemed exhausted and emotionally spent. Mrs. Peterson suffers from chronic bronchitis and is hoping for a lung transplant. Her condition, as you will hear, requires her to remain on oxygen. You have been at your son's trial every single day, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's consumed us totally, so that there's no joy in any of our lives since Lacey went missing.
To a world transfixed by the Peterson case, the sordid facts have become all too familiar. The Petersons had been married for 5 years. On Christmas Eve of 2002, 27-year-old Lacey Peterson, 8 months pregnant, mysteriously disappeared. Within weeks, suspicion turned to her husband Scott when a massage therapist named Amber Fry revealed that she was having an affair with him, a fact he did not initially tell police. Once the affair was exposed, Lacey's family, the Roaches, who had been supportive of him, began to distance themselves from their son-in-law. 4 months later, the decomposed bodies of Lacey and the baby they planned to name Connor were found washed ashore in San Francisco Bay, downstream from where Scott says he was fishing the day Lacey vanished.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
A few days later, Scott was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. Describe your son for me. Describe Scott Peterson.
Gosh, where should I start? He loved to hug and kiss, and very affectionate, just a really kind, sweet little guy.
Was Scott ever violent? Did he have a temper?
He had no temper, Barbara. He's got my temperament. I don't get angry. I get hurt or sad.
Thank you, Jordan.
Was he
Appreciate
ever
you.
in trouble?
No, never in trouble. Never in
Good night.
trouble of any kind. He was too good to believe, almost.
Too
I
good.
swear, we never had to swat the kid or anything, ever.
How did Scott feel about the fact that he was going to be a father?
Very excited. Happy.
He built a nursery?
Yes. Called us at 7 a.m. in the morning when she took the test. And I said, how do you know? And she said, I took the test. They tried for 3 years to have a child.
did?
Yes.
When was the last time you physically saw Lacey? How many days before she was missing?
4 days.
And everything seemed fine?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. We were all putting our hand on the baby's stomach. Scott was trying to find it for us so we could feel it kick. And they were just ecstatic.
When you first heard that Lacey was missing, what did you think? How did you hear, first of all?
The phone rang, I answered it, and Scott was sobbing on the phone, and all I could hear was Lacey and Miss, and I thought she'd miscarried. And my heart just sunk. And then I said, settle down, take some deep breaths. Everything's going to be okay. Take a few breaths and then tell me slowly. And he told me she was missing.
You know, there have been reports that he showed no emotion.
How are you doing personally? How are you holding up to all this?
Well,
This is a lot.
tremendous strain, obviously. So,
Questions, Scott.
Yeah,
Let him
what are you
rattle,
gonna
Scott. People have said he was emotionless.
No, it's not true. Most people know that. He showed emotion, but he didn't cry 24 hours a day. He cried privately. He worked at trying to find her. He tried to keep us up, because we were breaking down too, so he'd try to be brave for us.
What did you think when you learned that your son was the prime suspect?
Couldn't believe it. We thought they were joking.
Just disbelief. I mean, my God, here's a missing woman, and within days, you're focusing on my son, and you should be out looking for his wife and baby.
Mr. Peterson, how do you know your son had absolutely nothing to do with this?
It's just not in him. It is just not in him. I've never seen him mad. The only time I've seen him mad is if he misses a golf shot. He might get a little mad. That's
at himself.
That's it, at himself, yeah.
What kind of a marriage do you think that Scott and Lacey had?
They had a very good marriage. They backed each other up all the way. It was like it was them, and we were all outsiders. They were totally dedicated to each other.
Did you have any idea that your son was seeing another woman?
No.
Amber, did you know that Scott was a married man?
So when you heard that he was seeing another woman, what did you think?
It was surprising. It was disappointing.
What's up, Amy?
But it's certainly not anything that's extraordinary.
Well, if you thought the marriage was so good, were you not shocked?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were shocked.
We were shocked. We
And
were
disappointed.
unhappy. I mean, that's the reality of life. Men have affairs. Women have affairs.
When their wives are 8.5 months pregnant?
Probably
That's
more
mostly
so.
when men do, we've learned. I had no idea.
So is it your feeling, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that Lacey was pregnant and Scott needed another woman for, I don't know, sex or what? What do you think?
I think it's that simple, Barbara. I really do.
There's no
that
excuse
happens.
for it. It just
It
happened.
certainly doesn't give motive for murder.
How is Scott doing?
He's doing okay with the trial because he's actively involved in it, and he can see some light at the end of the tunnel. He works hard to keep himself up because there was a time he wanted to give up when he found that he had lost Lacey and the baby.
There are times when it's difficult to go on, obviously, because
Before the trial? Just in despair?
Yes, like his life was over and gone, and everything he was building in his life was for Lacey and the baby.
And you have to understand, he was virtually run out of town.
Scott, any comment? Got a second? Scott? It's Scott?
He had media following him,
Have you taken a polygraph test?
hounding him every day. He had shock jocks lined up in front of his house with bullhorns, screaming murderer. And
His
he
friends,
couldn't live in his home because of all the media presence. He became a homeless man, living out of a car. He really did. He literally became a nomad.
So in a strange way, being in this prison now
Lived out
in
of his
Utah
car?
is almost a relief.
That sounds strange, but at least we knew where he was every night and that he was safe, relatively safe.
Does Scott talk about Lacey?
Yes.
he has tears in his eyes, but we try to concentrate on the joy we had with her and the good memories.
Does Scott ever talk about his son?
Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard.
Give me some idea if you can.
Well, we try to keep him up when we go there. Things come up, and then when we mention it, then he starts weeping, and we just try to move it up. Remember the good things, the nice times that we had together, and we'll always have those. No one can take those away from us.
That's interesting. I don't know. It's weird. Like somebody only gets mad when they swing a golf club and miss. Something don't seem right. I don't know. It's crazy. We're going to go into a special here later on, but this thing, now this is something else. This is from another doctor, counselor, education, and supervision. This is Dr. Grande, not sure how you pronounce it. I don't even think we've checked out one of these before, but this is his channel. And this is going to be a video about Scott Peterson. Did bad science convict the wrong person? So was it bad science?
Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can review the Scott Peterson murder case. So I'll be taking a look at the timeline here and then some of the evidence from the prosecution and the...
And if this is too loud, let me know. It seems a little loud to me. And also, if we don't get into it in this episode, we will be the next one. We're going to watch like a special on the case. And I think that special was from a couple years ago. So it's something that it's a ABC special from, I think, 20 years after the crime or something like that. But we'll see if we'll be able to fit it in or not.
Defense, and then talking about some of the mental health, personality, and human behavior factors that played a part in this case. This analysis is based on information that has been reported. I'm not diagnosing anybody that is involved in this case, just speculating based on what could have happened in a situation like this. So taking a look at the people involved first, we have Scott Lee Peterson, who is 30 at the time of the murder, and this was back in 2002. We see Laci Peterson, his wife. She was 27, and she was 7.5 months pregnant with her unborn son named Connor. And then we see another kind of key player in this murder case, Amber Dawn Fry. Amber Fry, she was also 27, and she was Scott Peterson's mistress. So the case kind of starts there, right? We see Scott Peterson has an affair with Amber Fry. Allegedly, he tells her that he's not married, so he's single, and he's looking for a long-term relationship. So they have a relationship that kind of heats up in a short period of time. And then we move to December 23rd, 2002. And this is the last time that Laci Peterson was seen alive by people that she knew, right? So this was on December 23rd.
What's up, Clay?
Now, Scott Peterson claims that he saw her alive the next day, but that's different. There were some eyewitnesses that may have seen her. That's kind of a different thing. In terms of, like, initially looking at this case, there's pretty clear evidence that she was alive on December 23rd. So what happens here is that after she's seen on December 23rd, Scott Peterson claims that they went home. They were home on December 24th, and that he left to go fishing at around 9:30 a.m., and that she was in the house and alive. Now, he went fishing and came back, and she wasn't there, and eventually the police were called a little bit after 5 p.m. Now, it's interesting because that's all we have so far, right? She was alive on December 23rd. Scott Peterson says she was alive on the 24th, and he left and he came back, and she was missing. Now, the police came out and right away suspected that Scott Peterson had murdered his wife and Connor. They were thrown off by how calm he was, his kind of cool demeanor, and they're also thrown off by how he didn't seem to have a lot of questions for them. Now, it was a little while later when Connor's body was discovered, and shortly after that when Laci Peterson's body was discovered. So a little bit after the bodies were discovered, Scott Peterson was arrested. He was arrested on April 18th, 2003, near a golf course And what's interesting about his arrest is kind of what he had in his possession at the time when he was arrested. In his car, they found almost $15,000 in cash, 4 cell phones,
Wow.
survival and camping equipment, his brother's driver's license, and of course his own driver's license, and 12 Viagra tablets. So he'd also dyed his hair blonde. So this didn't look too good for Scott Peterson at this point, right? He looked like he may have been getting ready to flee. So as I mentioned, he was arrested, he was charged, and later on he was convicted of first-degree murder for Laci Peterson's murder and second-degree murder for the murder of Connor Peterson. So Scott Peterson was sentenced to death for those convictions, and currently, as I'm making this video, he's still in prison appealing the death penalty. So now taking a look at the evidence for the prosecution and defense, I'm looking here at the entire picture, not just what was presented back at the trial. So I look at the prosecution's case, their theory of the crime. It was actually pretty straightforward. They believed that Scott Peterson strangled or smothered Laci Peterson on the night of December 23rd or on the morning of the 24th, but they didn't know when it happened, and they argued they didn't have to prove when it happened. They only need to prove that it happened. They believed after that, when he went on what he called the fishing trip, he dumped the body in the San Francisco Bay. And his motivation would have been money, like life insurance money, and of course, the affair with Amber Fry. So taking a look at the evidence on the side of the prosecution, we see both physical and behavioral evidence. So in terms of physical evidence, they found a strand of hair in pliers on the boat, but I don't think this really was too convincing. They had this theory that Connor died on 12/24, and they supported this theory by using an expert who testified about the fetal bones and how he measured them and how the time of death could be calculated with that measurement. But the expert used an incorrect method. He used a method that deviated from the method that he said he used. So that was problematic. They also had evidence about the dogs picking up Laci Peterson's scent at the marina. But this is pretty interesting. The dogs were actually unqualified. I'm sure they were nice dogs. I don't have anything against the dogs. But evidently they were not qualified. They weren't very good or accurate at their job. And also the method that was used, the way the dogs were used, was actually incorrect. And one example of this is the scent. They gained the scent from cross-contaminated items. So items that Laci Peterson touched and used, but also items that Scott Peterson could have touched or used. Now recently we see that an expert has weighed in on this and indicated that the searching protocols that were used in the case were virtually guaranteed to produce an unreliable result. So the dogs really weren't used correctly, and again, they didn't appear to be qualified. The prosecution also called an expert who was supposed to understand how bodies would move in water, because again, with the theory of the crime, Scott Peterson must have dumped the bodies, but of course they washed up somewhere else, and the prosecution had to explain that difference, and they explained it through this so-called expert. But as it turned out, on the stand, this individual admitted that he had done no studies, he had no education or expertise in terms of how bodies move in water. He also indicated, and I think this is particularly important, that he was aware of the prosecution's theory of the crime. Now it's interesting because his testimony was key in getting the convictions on Scott Peterson. And yet he's saying he really doesn't know what he's doing, and he was aware of what result he was supposed to find. And I'll talk about this more.
What? This is weird.
Now we also see that one of the detectives said that the house smelled like bleach. Turns out there was no evidence to support that. And we see that there was really no evidence anywhere else. There was no evidence on Scott Peterson, in his boat, in his yard, in his house, in his vehicle, anywhere. So this just seems kind of unusual that there be no physical evidence at all on Scott Peterson or the places where he would have needed to be in order to commit the crime. Now getting into the behavioral evidence, I think this is particularly interesting because we see this in a number of cases, right? We see that there was this feeling that the police had that Scott Peterson was too calm, also that he was keeping secrets. So allegedly he kept the fact that he had a boat secret from Laci Peterson. We find out, of course, that this wasn't true. And really what the police were saying was Scott Peterson was not reacting in the right way. And I'll talk more about this in a few moments. So now moving over to the defense. Well, the defense had a few different components. They challenged, of course, the prosecution's assertions. They indicated that the timeline could be accounted for, right? So Scott Peterson went fishing, and they kind of showed the different steps in that, going to the warehouse, getting the boat, towing the boat to the marina, all this. And they also looked at this idea that he didn't lie, right? There weren't lies told in the beginning, and then you see him changing his story. That didn't seem to happen. And usually when people are guilty of murder, they do change their story once or maybe even more. So he didn't appear to lie. He went fishing and came home, and that seems to be supported by quite a bit of evidence. Now, I mentioned before the prosecution had that witness that testified about the length of the fetal bones to establish when Connor had died. And the defense called a witness to counter that prosecution witness. And this witness was going to testify that the unborn son, Laci Peterson's unborn son, lived until well after the mother was reported missing. So that would, of course, kind of tear apart the prosecution's case. Now, this individual, his name was Dr. March. He was a fertility expert. And on the stand, he kind of came apart under cross-examination. So when the prosecution was asking him questions, he kind of came apart, and he said he was sorry, that he made an error, and he even asked the prosecutor to cut him some slack.
Whoa, damn, he fell into the pressure. He apologized. He said, I made a mistake, and then he asked him to cut him some slack? What? Was this on the... Can you cut me some slack, prosecution? What? Oh my God.
This actually happened on the stand.
Are you
So
serious?
this was fairly devastating to the
On
defense.
the stand.
Other evidence they had, though, was that there was a burglary that was
Wow.
committed in
On
the
the
house across the
stand.
street
Can you
from the
cut me some
Petersons
slack?
on December 24th. Now, this gets a little mixed up because the prosecution had a different theory about when it happened, but that
On
was
the
still something the defense
stand.
brought up. So if there were burglars there, then it makes sense that those burglars would be dangerous. So it offers an alternate theory of the crime. And there were also a number of witnesses that saw Laci walking her dog after Scott
On the stand. Can you cut me some slack?
Peterson
Wow.
already left to go fishing.
Wow.
So if that's true, if Laci was walking her dog after Scott Peterson left, there's no way he could have committed the murder. So that was a good point for
Wow.
the defense. Of course, ultimately, the defense failed. And
That's
Scott Peterson,
crazy.
of course, as I mentioned, was convicted and
That's
sentenced to death.
crazy.
So now moving to my thoughts on this in terms of a mental health, personality, and human behavior aspect, and also my thoughts on whether Scott Peterson is guilty or not guilty. So obviously, I don't know for certain. I don't know if he did it or not, but I will offer my opinion on this. And I have a lot of difficulties with this case. I have a few different problems about what happened in this case, the kind of procedures that were followed, and how they didn't really follow the scientific method and really didn't represent good investigative practices, and how really Scott Peterson's behavior was used against him in a way that doesn't seem to be really supported by scientific evidence.
Oh, wow.
So in terms of that aspect, in terms of his behavior, we see that in this case, there's really a certain way that somebody's supposed to act when someone dies. And Scott Peterson didn't act that way. And that kind of got him in trouble, right, in terms of the investigation. But this brings up an important point. Do we really know how somebody's supposed to act when their spouse is missing, or when they've committed a murder, or both? Murders are not that common, and people going missing really isn't that common either, right? If you go and talk to a married couple that's been married 10, 20, 30, or say 40 years, and you ask them, how many times has your spouse gone missing? A lot of them will probably say it's never happened. So we don't really have a lot of observations of these kind of extreme situations on which we can make these judgments. There is no normal way to act. There is no correct way to act. Or if there is, it hasn't been established through scientific research. So we don't really know. Yet again, this was really used against Scott Peterson. I've seen people react in all kinds of ways to all kinds of stressful and unusual situations, right? Terrible things will happen in people's lives, and they'll be calm and collected. and kind of even calculating sometimes. Other times I've seen events occur that seem really minor or just routine, and people have incredibly strong dramatic reactions.
Yeah.
So
It can
I'm
be
not
all
really
over.
kind of buying this argument that there's a certain way to act when bad things happened and that he didn't act that way. The bottom line here is that the police believed he was supposed to be distressed, crying, and inconsolable, and he wasn't that way. So what happens, and this is why this is a problem, what happens here is that little misinterpreted observations, so small things that the police saw, lead to more significant events, like the police obtaining search warrants. So really, Scott Peterson's behavior, right, his demeanor, kind of directed the investigation. So this really brings up this argument about the role of the police, right? It's their job to collect evidence and to find the truth. They have to be open to the truth, whatever the truth is. So that includes that Scott Peterson may have been not guilty of this and somebody else was responsible. But instead, they used Scott Peterson's behavior to form their theory of the crime. Again, it directed the investigation. They did this with no mental health training, yet they used his personality and his behavior to make important decisions. Now, as I mentioned, I've been a counselor for a long time. I've seen people react in all kinds of situations, and I don't know what to make of Scott Peterson's demeanor. That's with years of training and experience. So how could it be that these detectives were able to draw all these conclusions
Supposedly.
from really this short period of time, right? There's this idea that this behavior indicates a state of mind, not like a long history, not like we see in counseling where we can work with people for a long time and kind of see patterns, but just this brief behavior, really this momentary interaction with Scott Peterson leads to this inference about his state of mind, and eventually, of course, helps build the case against him. So you could argue, of course, that momentary behavior has meaning, but I think my argument...
Okay, how about you fucking speed it up, bro? Damn, like I'm gonna skip a little. I mean, I get it. You don't know either way, but I don't understand why are you...
is that we really just ask too much of police officers. I don't think these...
So we're asking too much? It's not bad science?
police officers were necessarily bad or anything like that. I think we just ask too much of them. I call it the James Bond theory of police work, right? If you look at James Bond, like in the movies, he was good at everything. He was an excellent driver. He knew how to operate a number of different types of weapons, including rifles and pistols and explosives. He could pilot anything.
The James Bond
a jet fighter, a helicopter.
Whoa, this is one of those times where we're driving down the fucking road and all of a sudden... The James Bond theory. I'm just trying to figure out where in the hell this is going. What?
Helicopter, a boat. He was great at hand-to-hand combat. He understood technology, and he had fairly good social skills, although, of course, this would be debatable, I suppose. So James Bond really could do everything, but real people can't. And we see a number of examples in this case of this happening. We see one of the detectives talking about a witness that saw Lacey Peterson alive.
Dude, you started off your video with multiple fucking things that talked about how the shit people were doing were contradiction. And then we go to the James Bond theory? What the hell, bro? We got 10 minutes.
When Scott Peterson already left, and he said that he didn't think that occurred because it didn't happen. She was already dead by then, meaning Lacey Peterson. So he had already formed his conclusion and then was finding or excluding evidence based on that conclusion. right?
Right.
Because in his mind, Lacey Peterson was already dead. That witness didn't say that she wasn't. That was the logic being used there. We also see that those burglars that burglarized the house across the street, they were eventually arrested. Their names were Stephen Todd and Glenn Pierce. And then when they were arrested, they said, nope, that didn't happen on the 24th. It happened on the 26th. Because, of course, we know that burglars would never lie, right? So this was really what the police were thinking. That burglary was okay with these two people, with these two men, but it would somehow violate their values to lie. So burglary, that's okay, but lying is where they draw the line. This is actually what the police must have believed. Now, of course, they were trying to fit the evidence to the theory of the crime. But it's interesting because there was a guard in a nearby prison who monitored a phone call between an inmate and the inmate's brother. And on that call, the inmate's brother said that Stephen Todd, one of the burglars, admitted that he was confronted by Lacey Peterson on December 24th, 2002. Now, there are other factors involved here too, just not mistakes that the police might have made. We see that we have in Scott Peterson somebody with no history of anger or violence. So it doesn't seem likely that somebody like that would commit this type of crime and leave no evidence, physical evidence, behind at all. Again, not in his truck, not in the boat, not in the warehouse, not on his person. And he did all this in broad daylight, and there were no eyewitnesses. Now, there were eyewitnesses that saw Lacey Peterson alive after Scott Peterson went fishing, but there were no eyewitnesses that saw him commit this crime. Now, there were witnesses that saw Scott Peterson. For example, he was observed at the boat ramp, and they said there was really nothing unusual about his behavior with the boat. They didn't see like a human-sized bag being loaded on the boat or being in the boat. So the witnesses that did see Scott Peterson really don't have testimony consistent with what we see in terms of what the prosecution was saying happened. Now, at this time, as I'm making this video, there are 11 eyewitnesses that claim to have seen Lacey Peterson after Scott Peterson had already left. So when you think about things like reasonable doubt, with the strength of the prosecution's case, meaning it's a fairly weak case, how many witnesses would somebody need here to say, okay, there's reasonable doubt? Again, there are 11 people saying.
I'll keep playing it. I'm just kind of like, I don't know, bro. I don't know.
That they saw her. How many would be necessary? How many could be wrong and there would still be reasonable doubt in this case? So this brings me to my thoughts in terms of guilt or Scott Peterson being not guilty, right?
Thank you.
So, of course, the answer, as I mentioned before,
Oh,
is
my
I don't
Lord.
know, but I will speculate and offer my opinion here. And it
Man.
really just is my opinion. So if we start with some of the kind of the key points of the case, right? Was Scott Peterson a good guy? Well, he was having an affair, and apparently he had an affair before that. So by that standard, it doesn't seem like he was a good guy, and I think that hurt him. Was he suspicious in this case? Was his behavior suspicious? Yes, right? Being calm and having a cool demeanor and all that does seem suspicious, but I talked about how that might not mean anything. So what about in terms of like preponderance of the evidence? If I think about this and say, is there a 51% chance that he did it, in my opinion, right? Well, criminal cases, of course, aren't decided by preponderance of the evidence, but I'll give my thoughts on this. I really thought about this a lot. Initially, I thought that he probably did do it. And I think that for me, it was the timing with the affair. But as I look at the timeline and the lack of evidence and the other evidence in this case, I'm kind of left on the fence, maybe even leaning toward, I don't believe that he did it. I mean, I believe there's a chance he did it, but not a 51% or greater chance, right? So that's kind of where I am.
That was not even a fucking...
Doesn't seem like he was a good guy, and I think that hurt him. Was he suspicious in this case? Was his behavior suspicious? Yes, right? Being calm and having a cool demeanor and all that does seem suspicious, but I talked about how that might not mean anything. So what about in terms of like preponderance of the evidence? If I think about this and say, is there a 51% chance that he did it, in my opinion, right? Well, criminal cases, of course, aren't decided by preponderance of the evidence, but I'll give my thoughts on this. I really thought about this a lot. Initially, I thought that he probably did do it.
So initially he thought that he did. You're all over the place, bro. I'm sorry. All of that for this answer right here.
And I think that for me, it was the timing with the affair. But as I look at the timeline and the lack of evidence and the other evidence.
Okay, dude. Next.
A half-month pregnant woman learns her husband has had an affair and is saintly and casual about it.
The hell was that?
Accommodating, makes a peace with it.
Well, you don't know. No one knows our relationship but us. And that's at peace with it. Not happy about it.
The LA Innocence Project has now taken on Scott Peterson as a client. He was convicted back in 2004. He got the death penalty in 2005. The death penalty was taken off the table based on some procedural issues that had happened during jury selection. But he is still convicted now and serving a life sentence. The question is, why is the LA Innocence Project taking on this case? They say there's new evidence that could prove that Scott Peterson is innocent. Back with me, Geraldo Rivera, veteran journalist, Ashley Banfield, host of Banfield on News Nation, and Jesse Weber, News Nation legal contributor. Ashley, the defense always says when talking about this case that the only reason Scott Peterson got convicted is because he was having an affair, right? That's always been the argument. But in my view, what they don't focus on is the things that he said to Amber Fry, right? It wasn't just the fact that he was having an affair with Amber Fry. It was the fact that he was talking about the fact that his wife was gone before she was missing, that at the memorial service, he's pretending he's in Europe, etc.
It was all sketch.
That's not just an affair. And that is stuff that I'm surprised the LA Innocence Project doesn't seem to be focusing on.
It's very, very inconvenient. But I have covered cases before that curled my hair more than today. Cases that I thought were absolute slam dunk. One in particular in Rhode Island where the cop was having an affair and the girlfriend got a letter from the cop saying, the girlfriend sent a letter to the cop saying, I'm going to tell your wife. And she ended up dead that night. That's a slam dunk to me. And his DNA is all over the place. And he was innocent because some random guy from her past broke into her upstairs window and raped her and killed her. And it really opened my eyes to, it doesn't matter how many coincidences there are. It can look really, really awful. And it does. I agree with Geraldo. Scott Peterson looks like about the most guilty guy I've ever come across. But so did the Rhode Island cop. And so sometimes something comes along like that van and the mattress and the rag that was in the fuel tank of the van and the fire on Christmas Day and the witness who says, I saw a pregnant lady getting shoved in a van, Chris, those are also a lot of coincidences. And perhaps today, 2 decades later.
Damn, she took up the whole fucking slot.
We have such, far more sophisticated DNA testing.
Damn, Banfield.
They see a possibility here that Lacey was in that van.
Yeah, the problem is you also have to believe.
Give everybody else some time.
It can't just be somebody else
That's
did
not hard, Dan.
What?
No, that is not hard. I have often believed Mark Geragos when he says it was the most high-profile case of the day.
Right.
Everyone talked about the San Francisco Bay and the fishing spot.
But here's the thing,
It's convenient for killers to drop her there.
Right, except they would have had to have held the body. Right? So supposedly these guys are burglaring the house across the street, right? She interrupts it. They kill her or abduct her and they decide, let's hold the body until we can figure out where Scott Peterson was so we can then dump the body there. That's the part about it that makes it
I
absurd.
disagree with you. Move the body. Different verb. Move the body. Very, very easy. They could have stashed that body anywhere and then move the body to say, now we're in the clear. I know, again, it defies a lot of logic. You have to make some mental jumps.
Come on, speak up.
Because then it definitely looks like Scott Peterson and then they're in the clear.
Speak up, Jesse.
Point out the obvious.
So they
murdered her for what reason?
One at a time.
The potential
They
burglars
dumped it
here
and moved it.
The potential burglars here who were cleared were not criminal masterminds. If you look at their background, Dan, they weren't the most sophisticated.
And they had other
individuals.
stuff with them from other burglaries.
Yeah, I don't think those are the people that are going to do that. Now, is it certainly possible? I will tell you the way that I look at this, and I've had this conversation recently since Scott Peterson's name has been in the news. Yes, the Innocence Project thinks they might have something. But if you were to try Scott Peterson today, you might not get a guilty verdict. I spoke to people yesterday who go, I don't know who this guy is. Oh, isn't that from Gone Girl? They don't know about this case. And the evidence might be different today.
They would get a conviction today.
You believe that?
100%. Thank you for
100%.
Yeah, the Los Angeles Innocence Project is jumping into the case for the convicted double murderer. They filed several motions asking the court for permission to test several items, saying in part, quote, evidence has been discovered that points to Mr. Peterson's innocence.
Innocence? What are they talking about? He, of course, was convicted back in 2004 for the death of his wife, Lacey, their unborn son, Connor, in Modesto, California. The main evidence that led to his conviction included a couple of things, mainly the fact that the bodies of both Lacey and Connor turned up in San Francisco Bay. And that, of course, is where Scott Peterson was there fishing in his new boat the day of Lacey's disappearance.
And plus, the thing that really stands out about this case were the bizarre interactions Peterson had with investigators and his mistress, Amber Fry. She helped the investigation by secretly recording Peterson while his pregnant wife was missing. Those recordings were played in court, and Ted, you were there, front and center inside of that courtroom during this trial.
And those recordings were a game changer. They shifted the entire trial. He was, it looked very good for him until that point, even with the fact that the bodies were found in the bay, because it was announced, his alibi was announced within 24 hours of Lacey going missing. So the theory from the defense has always been someone else did this. There was a robbery across the street. Those robbers took her, dumped her in the bay once they found out where Scott was. But Amber in that courtroom killed it for him, because those recordings were of a lying, horrible man that had a beautiful pregnant wife at home. And a couple of the things he said at one point in one of those recordings, he said, "This is going to be my first Christmas without my wife.
Right.
She's gone." This was
that was so gross too. You know, when he said that contribution call out, super chat, sticker, membership, Cash App, Venmo, Sherry E. Thank you so much for the $4.99 super sticker. I wish it would. It's got a ha ha ha. I wish it would show those on StreamYard. I wish you could see the animation on there. Maybe they'll update that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Sherry. This is, I don't know. This is he going to get a new trial?
2 days or a week before.
Is he going to get a new trial?
It was part of it. The question now is, so the LA Innocence Project, what do they have in their filings? And I've read through them. They reference this new evidence. Well, they're also asking the court to test some old evidence. A van that was found on Christmas Day, the day after Lacey went missing at the Modesto airport. I remember at the time, that was a piece of like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Poo-pooed by prosecutors. They want to test some materials found that washed up with Lacey's body in the San Francisco Bay, specifically this bag, as they call it, a target.
If let me know. Let me know. We'll check them out on the next show. We're going to check out one more episode from a professional, and then we'll be ending it this evening. I might go to the lounge because I was thinking about maybe playing like Washington State University versus the Idaho Vandals football or something. I don't know. We'll see. But Yeah, we could even get into it tomorrow because tomorrow, if I'm able to get on during the day, it'll be a daytime true crime. So I'll be kind of talking about a bunch of different cases. Really, it'll be whatever. Tomorrow night we'll be doing part 2 of It's All About the Greengemans. And we'll be finishing up the read through of that final chapter as well.
Target bag, not Target, the store that we're used to going to. It's a shipping company.
Poo
It has
poo.
plastic and some duct tape around it. So why are they targeting this? I talked to the attorney that's been representing Scott for many years, and yesterday, back and forth. He says that they have been totally briefed, and they're looking at specific items that they're zeroing in on, and it's going to be fascinating.
This is willy-nilly.
That's the
is
thing.
serious.
What?
The Peterson family and Scott has been maintaining his innocence for years, and we've heard this time and time again, the robbery across the street. Well, one thing that did happen after, I don't know if you remember on Court TV here, when they had the big jury inquisition. There was
Strawberry
that
shortcake?
Yeah, strawberry shortcake. They brought her into San Mateo
Strawberry
County to
shortcake.
question her about the...
Who's Strawberry Shortcake? Yeah, let me look at the poll here. And I know you guys don't like Nancy Grace, but we're going to watch an episode of Nancy Grace on the next one, too. Let's see what the poll is. Wow. 48% yes, 52% no. Wow, there's the results. Wow, that's crazy. That's pretty damn close. 89 votes. That's pretty damn close, you guys. Is it going to show it on... Oh, it doesn't show it, so I can't highlight it. That sucks. That's pretty
process.
close.
Well, he lost that, right? The judge ended up ruling against
Yeah,
him.
right.
But it was in the news every single day in the Bay Area. And someone contacted Scott Peterson's sister, Janie, after that, after this was in the news, and said, hey, I have this information, new information. Could it be related to that, I wonder?
Wow, that could be a game changer. It's a story that so many people know. It's iconic when it comes to murder trials. Let's bring in our guest to discuss this in California. Our guest who's been standing by this hour, Joseph Tully's good to see you. Tell me your reaction to the LA Innocence Project taking up this case.
It's very, very surprising. I would say borderline shocking, but being a defense attorney, it would take more to shock me, but it's extremely surprising. As you pointed out, the Innocence Project doesn't just take anything. There had to be something very real, very concrete to get them interested in this case.
What I was referring to with this new evidence, we know that someone contacted Janie Peterson, and the story is, hey, I was in this room where this guy was talking about being one of the robbers and saying that, yeah, Lacey interrupted the robbery at the Medina house across the street, and we killed her because we had to shut her up. 3 people were interviewed by the defense team and an investigator. They signed affidavits, and Scott actually filed it because he's lost his representation. Now he's not on death row. He filed it in his own writing from his cell. But part of the equation was they couldn't find the actual person who these people were talking about, right? So you had these declarations, but where's the guy that was talking about it? Could it be, Joseph? Maybe the Innocence Project found the guy. He gave them a version of what's going on, and that's why they're targeting their request in terms of DNA testing. If he said, yeah, we had that van, we wrapped her in that plastic, well, that might make sense.
Sure, yeah, we do know from their filings the Innocence Project is citing to the burn ban. They want DNA testing. They wanted witnesses who saw Lacey walking her dog that morning. And they're citing to things related along those lines. So what I've seen exactly supports what you're saying.
Yeah, there were several witnesses that did not make it to the witness stand at trial who reported seeing Lacey walking the dog during that morning. And if any one of those people was correct, then Scott's innocent, just because of the timeline and the way things worked. The defense didn't bring them on, so that's interesting. The Innocence Project also wants to look at that. To me, they're asking for old evidence to analyze it, but they keep referencing new evidence in their motion. So
do you think it could be a new angle on that evidence or a new look? But that could be the witness that you're mentioning.
It has to do with this robbery, or at least a van, an abduction, and it sounds like they've got an identity and they want to connect it with some DNA.
Right. And Joseph Telly, I just want to ask you the follow-up on this, that even if there is this new evidence, I mean, we see appeals. So we see defense attorneys finding things that went wrong in the first trial, things that went wrong in the investigation. They file that in appeal. But when the Innocence Project takes something, they have to take into consideration the optics. They have to take into consideration what it would mean to help someone who has a very bad reputation when it comes to those who remember this case, remember just seeing that smiling photo of Lacey and thinking about Connor. Is that even more so the likelihood that there may be actually something to this possibility of his innocence?
Sure. Yes, I think that while there wasn't any direct evidence, or barely any direct evidence linking Scott Peterson to the murder, there was very strong circumstantial evidence. I remember, to me at the time when the news was coming out, finding like cement powder in the boat, the same boat that he went fishing in around the time of the disappearance. That was strong circumstantial evidence to me. But I also think that, it's not enough for the Innocence Project to say, hey, there's new evidence. They have to say there's new evidence that's tied to an actual defense of innocence. So they can't say, hey, here's evidence that might have raised a reasonable doubt. They have to say, here's evidence that supports actual innocence of Scott Peterson, and have an uphill battle going forward in the appellate court system on that.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? Is that at this point, he's exhausted a lot of his appeals already. He's off of death row, so he doesn't have Cliff Gardner working for him anymore, who's a fantastic appellate attorney in the Bay Area. He's in this position where the Innocence Project is fantastic. And Pat Harris, talked to me yesterday and said, this is great. We couldn't be happier to have them fighting this battle. Joseph, you mentioned the cement. He made anchors, and he admitted that he made these anchors. The state opined that he used them to weigh down Lacey's body because that's the only reason that how he could do it. They were trying to figure out how he pulled it off. The cement residue, he had an anchor there, and he used them, and he made them, and he admitted that. All of if you deep dive this, and this, I've done it for years. Here's the problem with this case. It's always bugged me, is that you see him, you hear him, you get the details of what he did with Amber and all these lies, and you think, oh my God, he did it for sure. I said that many times, he did it for sure. Then you sit through the trial, you go through the evidence, and you're like, wow. You would think that X, Y, and Z there would have been blood in the house, there would have been something. There just isn't. It's not 100% for me. And I know a lot of people make fun of me and say that I'm a dumbass for not thinking that he's guilty, but I've always had this weird sense of there's like a 5% chance the guy didn't do it, and now the Innocence Project is involved. I say stay tuned, Joseph Tully.
Something's
Interesting. All right, the last video we're going to check out tonight is from, and you probably know this channel too, Harvard Lawyer Lee. And this also has to deal with Scott Peterson. And we're going to see what she thinks about this.
Hi, everybody. It's Harvard Lawyer Lee. In 2005, Scott Peterson was convicted of murdering his wife and unborn son and sentenced to death. He spent nearly 20 years on death row, but now he may get a new trial. Who is Scott Peterson? And how is he going to get a new trial? Well, welcome to the channel. I'm Lee Wallace. I've been a trial lawyer for more than 25 years. This channel is about the intersection between life and law. While he was at California Polytechnic, Scott Peterson worked at a restaurant. One night he met Lacey at the restaurant, and she made the first move. After 2 years, they moved in together, and then when she graduated, they got married. In 2002, Scott and Lacey Peterson had been married 5 years. By Christmas time that year, Lacey was 7.5 months pregnant, and the Petersons were expecting a little boy they had decided to call Connor. Scott says that he left Lacey making Christmas cookies at 9:30 a.m. that morning. He initially told police he went to play golf, which is the same story Scott had told Lacey's sister the day before.
That he went to go play
He later
golf?
said he went fishing at Berkeley Marina, about 90 miles from the Petersons' home, using a boat no one knew he had purchased.
What?
Scott says that when he returned that evening,
What?
Lacey was gone. The table was set for family.
So he told everybody he was going golfing and then told him he went fishing and it was in a boat that nobody knew he got?
Dinner the next night.
What?
Her keys and wallet were still at the house. Either Scott or his father-in-law called the police to report that Lacey was missing.
What?
Police responded to the scene where they found a phone book on a kitchen counter lay open to a full-page ad for a defense lawyer. Detectives said Peterson was nonchalant. Initially, Scott Peterson's in-laws defended him, and Scott denied having had any affairs. But police later concluded that Scott Peterson had had 2 affairs during his marriage to Lacey. He was in the throes of a 3rd affair when Lacey disappeared. Scott Peterson met massage therapist Amber Fry on November 20th, 2002, when Lacey was 7 months pregnant. Fry says Peterson claimed he was single. She began to suspect he was married and confronted him on December 9th, 3 weeks into the relationship.
Wow.
Scott doubled down on the story, saying he had lost his wife and it would be his first holiday without her. Despite the fact that he quickly became a suspect in Lacey's disappearance, Scott did several interviews with the media in which he made emotional pleas for help finding Lacey. He was filmed putting up missing person posters. On ABC, Diane Sawyer interviewed Scott Peterson, and Peterson told the world that he was innocent and that he didn't murder Lacey and wasn't yet willing to believe she was dead. Her body had not yet been found. He acknowledged he was a suspect, but said he had never hit her and that he believed violence against women was a disgusting act.
Yeah.
He said he never hit her or injured Lacey. Amber Fry held a press conference laying out the timeline. Scott Peterson insisted he was glad she came forward and that he, in fact, had lied to her that he was not married. Amber Fry said she found out about Lacey from the news, while Scott said he told her. Scott claimed he told Lacey about the affair in early December. Diane Sawyer asked the pivotal question, do you really expect people to believe that an 8.5-month pregnant woman learns her husband is having an affair and is saintly and casual about it, accommodating, makes a peace with
Hell no.
He called his marriage glorious and said they took care of each other very well. She was amazing. Scott's family stood staunchly behind him, telling Diane Sawyer that it was impossible that Scott Peterson could have killed Lacey because, his father said, he's the gentlest soul I think I've ever known. Diane Sawyer asked Scott Peterson about a neighbor who supposedly had seen him loading something into his car. Scott claimed he was loading market umbrellas. The interviews were polarizing. Many people thought he sounded sincere, and they concluded he must not have killed her. Other people believed the interviews were self-serving acting. Police were unable to locate Lacey or her unborn child until 4 months later when the police recovered 2 bodies near where Scott Peterson had gone fishing. On April 13, 2003, a couple was walking their dog near Richmond's Point Isabel Regional Shoreline Park when they spotted a very small baby body that was decomposing in the marshy area at the shore.
Aw.
The autopsy report was sealed, but an AP source said the fetus had a significant cut and nylon tape wrapped around the neck. A day later,
What? A significant cut and nylon tape around the neck? Are you serious?
another park goer found the torso of a recently pregnant woman about a mile away. The torso was missing the head, arms, most of the legs, and internal organs. DNA tests
What?
confirmed the bodies were of Lacey and her son. Police brought in sonar equipment to find handmade concrete anchors that they believed had been used to weigh down Lacey's body, but they didn't find any. Police nabbed Scott Peterson in San Diego and found some suspicious evidence that convinced them he had been about to flee to Mexico. His hair was dyed blonde, and his Mercedes-Benz was filled with survival gear, camping equipment, $15,000 in cash, 4 cell phones, several changes of clothes, and both his brother's and his driver's license. And for some reason, 12 Viagra tablets. Scott claimed he was innocent. The only forensic evidence that the police had was a single hair from Lacey stuck to pliers found on Peterson's boat. But after Lacey went missing, Scott took several steps that would come back to haunt him. He added 2 pornographic channels to his cable service days after his wife disappeared. He traded in her Land Rover for a pickup truck. He turned the baby room into a storage area. He expressed interest in selling their house. Police said all of those facts meant Scott was not expecting Lacey or Connor to be coming home. Amber Fry agreed to record her conversations with Scott Peterson, and the state played 12 hours of the taped conversations at trial, where Amber Fry was the star witness. Trial lasted an astonishing 5.5 months, after which Peterson was found guilty. The sentencing penalty phase took another 4 months. Scott Peterson was sentenced to die by lethal injection. Scott Peterson sat on death row at San Quentin for 20 years as the appeal of his sentence wound its way through the courts. In 2020, the California Supreme Court upheld his conviction, but overturned his death sentence because the trial judge had dismissed jurors who had said they were opposed to the death penalty without asking them whether they could put their views aside. On December 8th, 2021, Peterson was resentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Prosecutors considered retrying the penalty phase, but ultimately decided not to. So Scott Peterson is no longer subject to the death penalty. He was moved off death row. Scott Peterson's team is now requesting a new trial. Now, why would Scott Peterson get a new trial? That's a wild story all its own. Peterson alleges juror misconduct that is something right out of a John Grisham novel. They argue that juror number 7, Rochelle Nice, lied on the juror questionnaire in order to get on the jury. Peterson's team claims that Nice was convinced in advance, before trial, that Scott had murdered his wife and unborn child, and she wanted on the jury to ensure he would be convicted.
What?
Peterson's team notes that Nice failed to reveal that she herself had been a victim of domestic violence and had obtained a restraining order against someone threatening her own unborn child. Nice wrote a book, We the Jury, about the trial. Peterson's team says she also wrote Peterson 17 letters while he was in prison. While the letters had different topics, they say all of them referred to Little Man, which was Nice's personal nickname for Scott Peterson's unborn child. Click this button right here to find out more.
Wow. I didn't know all that. Holy shit. That's crazy. We're going to share this one more time before we take off this evening. Definitely check it out. There's a video on the website too. Definitely watch it. Definitely check it out though. Here's the link, the Innocence Project, the LA Innocence Project. Check it out and see what it's all about. Fingers crossed. Thank you all for hanging out tonight, earlier today in the Members Live. Appreciate you guys. Fingers crossed I can be on in the morning. I don't know until last minute, so you might see a last minute live. If not, I'm definitely going to be back on tomorrow night, 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern. We're going to be doing part 2 of It's All About the Green Gemins, baby. Be finishing that up tomorrow night. Getting back into some more Enon stuff. Doing Jeffrey Epstein and some of these other cases as well. Appreciate you guys. Thank you. Hope you have a peaceful and positive evening. And we will see you tomorrow. Stay warm.